Road Manager Ward, our cameraman, Road Manager Ward and I have traveled together countless thousands of miles around and around the world for about a decade. And we're both music fanatics. We hit record stores in every country that we go to, and we always find stuff. And we were in Germany earlier this year when this tour was beginning, about like 80, 90 shows ago. And someone came up to me after the show and said, my wife and I just went to Dublin, Ireland, and visited with Phil Lynott, that's the bass player in Thin Lizzy, Phil Lynnott's mom, Philomena, who's thankfully still with us. And she wants you to call her, and here's her phone number. And I've been friends with Philomena for about 20 years. And I met her at a Thin Lizzy tribute concert in 1996, and we became friends. And a nicer person you'd be hard-pressed to find. She's just wonderful in every way. And she told me after we met, I want you always to consider me your Irish grandmother. And so she writes me these beautiful letters, and she suffered a stroke a while ago, which makes, she's still very sharp, but she forgets things, but she's hanging in there. And so Ward and I got to Ireland in the morning, and so I said, we got to go talk to Philomena. And so we called, and this guy who takes care of the house answered the phone and said, hey, I said, hey, it's Henry. Tell Philomena we're in town, can we come by? And everyone in Dublin knows where Phil Lynnott's mom lives. It's a house called White Horses. So we jump into a cab, we said, take us to White Horses. And the guy goes, you're going to see Philomena. We said, yeah. And so we go over to Philomena's house, and Philomena misses her son, Phil Lynott, horribly. And the entire house is full of gifts people have given her of Phil, paintings, weird papier-mâché collages, statues, also all of Phil's stuff. And so we spent the entire afternoon with Philomena making us tea and curating all of the Phil stuff. His jukebox is there, his record collection is there, and I'm going through his record collection, and Ward and I, being vinyl hounds, are pulling out. He's got the Vertigo swirl pressing of Paranoid, which is worth like hundreds of dollars. It's played like maybe 4 times. It's like the day he bought it. He's got Ramones records. He had an amazing collection of records. So I'm pulling him out, taking photos, because I am that guy. And his cowboy hat was there. We got to put the cowboy hat on. So I said, where is Phil's singles? Because I'm a 7-inch record collector. And she said, oh, they're in the closet. And she has them stacked like pancakes, kind of jammed in with some books next to a windowsill in a closet. I'm like, no! And so I took them all out and put them on the couch in the living room, and I collated them in chronological order of release, because I am that guy. So I said, look, at some point I'm coming back with an acid-free archival box with 6mm thick polylined sleeves. I'm going to archive the entire 7-inch collection. Would that be okay? And she kind of half heard me, like, anytime you want to come and visit as far. I said, the vinyl needs to be maintained. Oh, it would be so great to see you again. I said, the 7 inches must be kept out of the sun. It'll fade the picture sleeves. It is always so good to see you. I'm like, you must understand. So anyway, we had an amazing 2 or 3 hours with Phil Lynnott's mom, hanging out with Phil Lynnott's stuff, and it just made the entire day really, really special. So Kevin, there's your answer on the topic of Thin Lizzy. Marco has an interesting question about Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura wants to know that if I did a quote for Mr. Ventura's latest book. He wants to know, did I just happen to read the book, or did I actually know Jesse Ventura? I kind of sort of know Jesse Ventura. I think he read something of mine at some point and found me to be interesting, and he asked me to be on his podcast, which he does from somewhere. I know he lives in Mexico. But I don't know if he does his podcast from there. Anyway, I went to a small studio in Pasadena where Larry King now does his Larry King live show. This is a very small facility. And he basically is piped in through an ISDN line through headphones. And so I've done his podcast, or whatever it is, 2 times. And he's a very friendly guy. I'm sure he and I agree on some things, perhaps disagree on others. but he was altogether, could not have been more polite to me and very, very pleasant. And so whenever he calls and asks me to be on the show, I say, yeah. And so his people sent me his new book on marijuana, cannabis legalization. It's astonishingly well written. It's really, really good. And I read it with great interest. And I wrote a blurb for it, and I sent it in. And all I have is the galley proof. I have not seen the final book. And so I guess they put my quote on the book. So that was news to me, Marco. So yeah, that's how I came into contact with Jesse Ventura. It was his people getting to my person. I don't have people, I have a person. Her name is Heidi. She's been hectoring and emasculating me for 19 years. And she never lets me forget it. 19 years! I'm like, I know. You're the reason. The sound of your voice is why I like to tour so much. Let's see. Tom has an interesting question. Let me see if I can read it. Okay. Tom understands that I'm done making music. However, are there any musicians who I would like to collaborate with? No. And I don't want to just end the answer with that. Many years ago, I was doing music pretty furiously, like write, record, tour, and to slap around the earth. I was obsessed with it, or it was obsessed with me. And one day I woke up and I had no more lyrics. It was one of the clearest thoughts I've ever had. It's like someone put it in my brain, like, ding, you are done. I'm like, what? And someone said, you are done. I just heard it in my head. And so I mulled it over for a couple of hours. I go, wow, I'm finished. It was like losing an internal organ. I had no idea that I could be done with music. I simply had no more lyrics. And I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be an oldies jukebox. I don't want to play old music, because that to me is resting on your laurels. It's like, it's a false sense of security. I don't want to be that guy going, hey kids, remember this one? I don't want to be that person. So I called my manager at the time. I said, I'm done with music. And he saw 15% of his life just go poof. And he went, no! I'm like, yeah, man. He said, can't you just do like the hits? I'm like, a band like mine has no hits. And I don't want to be fake. Either I hit it with 100% or I leave. And I don't hit it with 99, because if you hit it with 99%, everyone just remembers the 1% you were faking, because you can fool no one. And so I said, I'll just have to do other things. And thankfully, I started doing other things as early as 1982, when I took a great interest in writing and self-publishing. And in the 80s, Hollywood directors started contacting me. They said, you're a crazy person, can you act? I'm like, as well as I can sing, click. But I got work anyway, so I started doing a lot of film work and voiceover work and documentary stuff. And now I'm actually writing screenplays. And so I'm doing a lot of different things. And so I said, look, I'm going to stop doing the music to stay honest, and I'll do other things. And now I find myself busier than ever. And so every once in a while, someone calls me and says, hey, can you be on my record? We're doing a benefit record. Can you sing on this thing? And so I'll show up as a favor. There's a band called Ruts DC. They're pals of mine. They're from England. And they said, hey, we've got this big empty track, and we'd love you to sing on it. So I said, for you guys, I'll do it. And so I did it. But there's really no one I'm looking to make music with. The most interesting offer I ever kind of received was indirectly, where Keith Levine and Jah Wobble of Public Image contacted me through a third party and said, get together with us and make some music. And that was really, really tempting, because that is one of the best guitar players in post-punk music. If you've ever listened to the second Public Image record called Metal Box or Second Edition, it to me is one of the finest records I own. And when those two guys came calling, I'm like, man, that would either be really interesting or an incredible expensive waste of my time, because I'm betting neither of them have money, and they'll be looking for me to finance it, and I don't want to put my arm into that moray eel's mouth. And so that was the most interesting offer. Do I ever think of making music again? No. Just because for me it was a time and place thing, and I've been there and I've done that, and I gave everything I had to it, and that's all I had to give. This is an interesting question. In regards to finding role models, is it spontaneous, or do you have to put some thought behind it? I have a lot of heroes. There's a lot of people I greatly admire. Not many politicians, mainly artistic types, writers, thinkers, some musicians. Mainly my heroes come from the world of literature and journalism. Clear writers who were brave enough in their time to stand up. or those who were very articulate, like F. Scott Fitzgerald, to me is a great architect of the English language. His short stories are exquisite. His novels are all worth reading. He had a tragic end. He died about 4 traffic lights from where I live. I've actually been to the apartment where he grabbed the mantelpiece, grabbed his heart, had a heart attack, and dropped. And I've actually grabbed that mantelpiece and grabbed my heart like he was right here. Weird, but that's me. And so if I could wake up all my heroes and ask questions, it would be people like Albert Camus and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Thomas Wolfe, people like that, Nikola Tesla, just, people who think differently. As far as more contemporary role models, Muhammad Ali was huge to me, just because not only as a supreme athlete, but an African-American man saying what he was saying when he was saying it. It's amazing no one shot him. It's incredible no one put a bullet through his head, or Hoover didn't have him somehow falling down a flight of stairs and dying, or killing himself in his cell somewhere in Georgia. And so the way I pick someone to pay attention to and to leave myself open to be inspired by, if they can make me think differently about myself, my existence, and how to go forward. And that's the thing. If you can open my mind and make me want to know more, then I'm going to be strong enough to take the time, remain open-minded, and pay more attention to what you're doing. And I don't know if you noticed it tonight, but I did not curse on stage besides maybe saying dumbass and like dumbass idea. I used to curse like a sailor on stage. That's the way I was raised. My parents both had mouths like that. I stopped cursing on stage in the year of 2010. Why? Barack Obama. And I'm so impressed when he speaks on stage, if he's the president, he can't curse, or he shouldn't. And I just was really impressed by that guy. And I said, I need to make more sense and not rely on those words, which really don't ever get across anything I really want to impart anyway. I need to upgrade. And since then, I've never cursed on stage. I don't think I have. If I slipped, it was a slip. But there's a direct influence on me was that president. And it is my opinion that history is going to be very kind to that guy. Let's see. All right. Christy asks if I can tell a story of the craziest shows of Black Flag. Black Flag was a band that was around perhaps when many of you were in your infancy. If you can remember Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, that was the time period of Black Flag. The shows were very unregulated. They were never in a nice venue like this. They were in a venue that usually stank from the parking lot because the toilet had exploded. Dressing rooms had no running water, no showers, no meals, no pitcher of water or beer or nothing. It was like $8 a punch in the mouth and get out of my venue. And often the cops were waiting to get us out of the county so we could be out of their jurisdiction. And audiences their reactions were odd in that they liked the fast music, but when Greg Ginn, our leader and principal songwriter, started experimenting with slower tempos, they often took out their anger on me, the singer, I guess because I was so cute. And the cigarettes and cigars that were ground out in my legs, I still have the scars, the knuckles and the rings, and the feet that kicked me. I've chipped teeth, scars on my head from a boot, from ashtrays, pint mugs, and all manner of things. I have had over 30 stitches or more from the chin up from what was thrown at me. And so some of those gigs could get out of hand. And often there'd be stabbings in the crowd where they would beat up on each other. They'd leave us alone, but they would turn on each other. Rival gangs would show up to our shows using the dance floor as some kind of Darwinian, Nietzschean proving ground. One of the craziest shows I remember was 1984 in Holland. If you can believe it, Holland had skinheads. It's such a mellow country. And there's one gang from Arnhem and another gang, I think, from Nijmegen. And they met at our show to beat up on each other. And so we're playing, and the dance floor turns into this punch-out with a bunch of men with no hair beating the living daylights out of each other. Security tries to intervene, and the skinheads stop beating up on each other, and they beat up the security. Then they resume beating each other up while we're just playing. We're just the soundtrack for this crazy fight. And finally, the owner of the club said, okay, this show is over. Here come the cops. And so we got about half the show done. And there was blood on the dance floor. A year before, 1983, we were in Austria in a venue called the Arena, very apropos. If you ever see a close-up photograph of Michael Stipe from REM, you'll see an amazing wheel of scar right between his eyebrows. That was from a bottle of Beck's beer that was thrown at him at that venue that exploded on his head. He's such a nice guy. He didn't deserve that. How can you throw a bottle at an REM song? What? And I'm not saying the music's lightweight. Like, what in an REM song could possibly offend you? I can see me getting a face full of a beer bottle, but not Michael. But that amazing scar on his face was from that venue, because we talked about it once. Anyway, one night we're playing at the Arena in February of 1983. And this big guy gets on stage, a bouncer's trying to throw him off. I intervene to protect the guy from the bouncer. The guy I'm trying to protect grabs me and drops me like a bad habit. Like, boom! Fist like a UPS truck. So I hit the deck. I get up, because in Black Flag you're not allowed to stop. So you must get up, recover, and keep singing. And so I keep playing, and somehow the audience has turned on us, kind of, but turned on the bouncers. And so now the punk rockers are beating up the bouncers. We stop playing, and one person says, keep playing, like, okay, and we keep playing. The cops come in. The people beat up the cops. They bring in a police dog. They hit the dog, which sucked. And so they start beating up the cops. The cops don't know what to do. They start taking off the cops' uniforms and putting the uniforms on. And so now punkers are in the audience wearing police jackets, police hats, going, play. And there's a bunch of semi-naked cops in the place trying to get out of there. And I think we got most of the show done, but I got a beautiful punch in the face, and I barely remember the gig. I just remember a punk rocker with a policeman's hat on going like, play now. And that was easily the craziest night we ever had on stage. There was a stabbing in one show in Nevada, I think, and the show came to an end because of the stabbing, and the cops swarmed the backstage area because somehow it's our fault. And our roadie, Reggie the Kung Fu roadie, and he was a multiple discipline Kung Fu guy. And some kid jumps on stage to do the thing, and if Reggie would get a hold of him, he would just kind of do a thing, and the kid would kind of go paralytic and scream in pain, because he's got like 2 digits of his thumb into the kid's eye socket. We're like, Reggie, you can't maim the audience. And there was never a punch as well as like, and the kid like, ah! Like, Reggie, you're killing the fans. Anyway, Reggie had some marijuana, and they come backstage, and the cops are shaking us down. And they go, whose baggie? And there's like 4 grains of weed in some alligator baggie back in those days. So, whose is this? We're like, his. And thankfully there's not enough to bust him, so we just got this big talking to. But those kind of shows were very apropos. We had a lot of skinheads coming to shows to show us, you know, that they hated us. By 1986, violence was really peaking at Black Flag shows, and as usually white power organizations would come and seek heil us, and that to me is comedic content. When a bunch of chubby skinheads come in to my show and start seek heiling me, I turn into Henny Youngman. It's the most low-hanging fruit I've ever had in front of me. I'm like, really? You can't make it in the army? You could never have made it in the Third Reich? Are you kidding? Do laps around the venue until you get back in better shape. You shut up! They're so angry. And one time in 1986 in Orlando, these skinheads showed up ready to kill us. And the bouncers were all Cuban. And of course, they're brown-skinned. These skinheads hate the brown-skinned bouncers. And I said, hey, are we going to have any problems? And these guys all pull out straight razors and knives. And they all were like, no, man, we can't wait for these guys. I'm like, no, you can't cut the skinheads up. And they're like, yeah, we can't wait. I'm like, you cannot make people at our shows bleed. And so that would happen at Black Flag shows all the time. And so with the Rollins band, afterwards things got much better. We had nowhere near that kind of violence. The occasional punch out, but Black Flag shows could become very, very awful experiences where by 1986 I started to hate my own audience because they were some of the the awfulest people I've ever been in front of. And things are much, much better now. And so, do I have time for anything else? Okay, gotta go. All right, folks. Those are all the questions I got from you. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming to the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope our paths cross again. And until they do, fare you well. And thanks for everything. Good night.